Wait, did Trump finally admit that he lost?
In the election of 2020 than we did in 2016. Just remember that. Millions and millions of votes more. More votes than any sitting president in the history of our country. But they beat us by a whisker. They beat us just by a little whisker. He beat us from the basement.
He's saying it now, which is sort of better than never, but it's still way too late.
If he were to lose again, what would that mean for the country, in your opinion?
You mean if President Trump was to lose for the first time? He's never lost a presidential election.
Well,
yeah, he had a historic turnout. 81 million people have never turned out for a presidential election. Were you up on election day? Were you up when they stopped counting, which has never happened before, until they calculated how many fake votes that were trucked in the middle of the night, when they were pounding plywood over the counter windows that are mandated that you have observers, and they pounded plywood so the count couldn't be observed? But Trump still got the most votes of all time. That vegetable that was installed in the White House to be Barack Obama's third term can't fill a parking. Look at these people. That vegetable can't fill a Walmart parking lot.
So since he's admitting he lost, that means he'll accept the results of this next election, right?
How the hell do you get elected, right? You know how they got elected? By cheating. They get elected by cheating.
Of course not. And this time, to claim election fraud for this election, he's going to use anti-Semitism.
If I don't win this election, and the Jewish people would really have a lot to do with that if that happens, because at 40%, that means 60% of the people are voting for the enemy.
The whisker comments are always like, he didn't flat out say it. So MAGA is always just going to come up with an excuse, like as if we have to somehow interpret what Trump's saying, because this is a man who speaks his mind, but somehow they'll interpret it as code. The man has never spoken in code. It's always just been so flat out. Like that's also what they love about him. That is why he has a following, because he's, speaks his mind. But then of course, they all like try to decode what he said. It's like he lost by a whisker. So yeah, but he lost, and yeah. So you look at the birther lie. Trump started the birther lie, and then he admitted during the debate with Hillary that he's like, oh no, he like abandoned it and said, yeah, that's actually it's actually not true, and he tossed it to the side. People still believe that Obama was not a natural born U.S. citizen, even though Trump admitted it and admitted that the story had no merit. And, didn't matter. Trump could come out today and say this, I actually did lose. Sorry. Yeah, my bad. That none of his supporters would believe him. They wouldn't believe him. The fact that there was booing whenever he would talk about getting vaccinated, like for all the QAnon nonsense and anti-COVID stuff he has spewed from like his campaign, his own people, when he actually does want them to like get in line for stuff, like with the vaccine. I've been at rallies, I've watched it, where he said like, I did get vaccinated, if you can, it's your choice, but everyone's like, boo. This is Trump saying he got vaccinated. So, this is, you will see a next generation that is like, they're too like right wing for Trump. Like basically Trump is like too establishment, for them. Fun times. So there's two things, this is going to be hoping that he loses, fingers crossed, knock on wood. It's going to be different for him to do a January 6th thing because he's not the president. It was easier then because he was the president of the United States of America, and you were acting on behalf of the president of the United States of America. Much different energy. Not to say that people won't react with violence and crazy and stuff like that. However, it's different. when he's not the president. He's not in charge. And, he's definitely not going to pardon you. So much different energy. And that was, I remember the threats that I got dropped off. I remember I was getting a lot of threats leading up to the 2020 election. It was normalized. And that dropped off after J6. People were, dialed it back and they're like, okay, yeah, I don't know about this. He's nowhere to be found. I don't know if I'm not getting a pardon for this. And they watched him just leave the J6ers in the lurch. Recently, though, that's stepped back up. People are like, they're like, oh, well, you know what? He might win. And if he wins, they're ready to rock and roll. You have people saying, I'm ready to rock, for this country and get a gun and all of that. If he, loses, they're going to do the same thing if he wins. If he wins, it's like, oh, yeah, no, I'm going to act on behalf of the President of the United States of America. And, that is, when you see J6, what the tragic thing about all these people, they weren't necessarily trying to stop the vote. They were trying to find evidence. They're going in, stealing Nancy Pelosi's laptop because they're like, but there's got to be some evidence that, that they were, working, with the, the voting machine company and Hugo Chavez and, all of that nonsense. You had them going in, when the Viking and that crew went into Congress and started going through stuff. It was like, well, there's got to be, a smoking gun somewhere here. And that was sad to me, right? I was like, this is how deluded you are. Because, there's a point, there are elected officials, there are federal officials, there are members of the United States Congress that think the election was stolen. Normally, you go back in the day, you go back to my day when, the Republicans knew what they were spewing was absolute garbage, but they were like, this works on my people, so I'm gonna keep it up. Now you actually have them they believe this. The fact that more than, a few people believe this is terrifying. There's there's millions of human beings in the United States that believe this. And what is really baffling to me, if you're a Republican and you know goddamn well that he lost, you're planning to vote for Trump again, he lost the first time, and so it would stand to reason that everything else he did after that was just duplicitous, and you're still going to vote for him. There's something wrong with you. You just, I don't know, maybe you just hate trans people that much. You're like, you know what, I will vote for this awful human being because you know what, trans people, need to be exterminated. That's how they feel. That's how I'm, supposing they feel. I mean, do they feel different? Do you feel different? Are you one of those people? Let me know in the comments.